What would you do if the person you just stopped turned out to be the one in charge of your entire department? These two officers were about to find out the hard way, and it wouldn't just cost them their pride, it might cost them their badges. It was supposed to be a routine traffic stop. At least, that's what the two officers thought. But when they pulled over a calm, confident black woman, they had no idea they were about to make the most humiliating mistake of their careers. What started with disrespect and suspicion would end with a revelation so shocking the entire police department and the town would never forget it. This is the moment everything changed. It was just past 7:30 in the morning when Dr. Renee Parker turned down the final street toward the police headquarters. The sun was still low, casting a soft golden light over the quiet town. She was dressed in a tailored navy suit, her badge tucked safely into her leather bag, along with the official letter of appointment naming her the new chief of police. This was her first day. Her mind was already racing through the schedule, a formal introduction to the department, a meeting with the mayor, and an afternoon press conference. She wanted to make a strong impression. Her hiring had been kept under wraps for weeks to avoid media frenzy, so she knew most officers had no idea who she was yet. As she drove, the sudden flare of blue and red lights in her rearview mirror caught her attention. She glanced at her speedometer, perfectly within the limit. No turn signal missed, no stop sign ignored. Still, she eased her black sedan to the side of the road. Two uniformed officers stepped out of the cruiser, both white men, both wearing expressions that suggested they had already decided she was trouble. The taller one, Officer Trent, adjusted his sunglasses and approached her window, his partner, Officer Miller, lingering a step behind. "License and registration," Trent said curtly without greeting. Renee handed them over without argument. "May I ask why I'm being stopped, officer?" she asked, her tone steady. "Suspicious driving," Trent replied, though his answer was vague. "We've had reports of a vehicle matching yours cruising slowly near residential areas." Renee frowned slightly. "I'm on my way to work. This is the most direct route to the station." Miller's eyes narrowed at the word station. "Station? You a cop or something?" "I work in law enforcement," Renee said, carefully choosing her words. She wasn't ready to drop the full truth yet. She wanted to see just how far their assumptions would carry them. Trent gave a short laugh. "Sure you do. We hear that one a lot." He glanced at her driver's license, then at her, as if he doubted the photo was even hers. "Step out of the vehicle, please." Her heartbeat stayed steady. She had faced harder situations than this, but the arrogance in his tone still stung. She unbuckled her seatbelt and stepped out, standing tall in her heels. Miller circled the car slowly, peering inside as though expecting to find stolen goods. "Traveling alone?" he asked. "Yes," she replied. "And again, I'd like to know the actual reason for this stop." Trent smirked. "We'll get to that. Just cooperate, and we won't have a problem." The way he said it wasn't a reassurance. It was a warning. And Renee knew enough about warnings from cops like him to understand what he meant. She folded her hands in front of her, keeping her voice calm. "I'm cooperating. I'd appreciate the same in return." That earned her a raised eyebrow and a quick glance between the two men. They weren't used to pushback, not from someone they thought they could intimidate, but they were about to learn just how wrong they were. Officer Trent stepped closer, lowering his sunglasses so she could see the skepticism in his eyes. "Where exactly in law enforcement do you work, ma'am?" Renee didn't flinch. "I'll be at the station shortly. You'll find out then." Miller, still circling the car, stopped at the driver's side door and leaned in to look at the back seat. "You got anything in here we should know about? Weapons? Drugs?" Her lips twitched in the faintest trace of a smirk. "Only a leather briefcase. And my lunch." Trent's mouth tightened. "Ma'am, this is a routine stop. We ask the questions, you answer. That's how it works. I'm aware of how traffic stops work, she replied evenly. I'm also aware of my rights. Something about her calm confidence irritated Trent. People usually stammered or tried to explain themselves when he used that tone, but this woman, she was holding his gaze without a flicker of fear. Step to the front of your vehicle, he ordered. Renee did as told. The click of her heels against the pavement loud in the morning, quiet. Miller moved toward her trunk, running a hand along the edge as if that alone could uncover some wrongdoing. She caught him glancing at her suit and heels, clearly wondering why someone dressed like a corporate executive was driving alone through this neighborhood. His expression carried that familiar blend of disbelief and judgment she had encountered too many times before. "Do you live around here?" Miller asked. "No," she said. "I work here." Trent scoffed under his breath. "Right." Finally, Renee decided to turn the tables, just a little. "Tell me, officers," she began, her voice measured. "How long have you been with the department?" The question seemed to catch them off guard. 7 years, Trent said cautiously. 3, Miller added. Renee nodded. "And in those years, how often have you pulled over someone who was simply driving to work without a clear traffic violation?" Trent's jaw flexed. "Ma'am, we follow procedure." "That's not what I asked." The air between them thickened. Miller shifted uneasily, clearly sensing the conversation wasn't going their way. "Look, we're just doing our jobs," he muttered. Renee stepped closer, her eyes sharp. "And I'm about to start mine." Before they could respond, a black SUV pulled up behind a patrol car. Out stepped Captain Hayes, a tall, silver-haired man with an air of authority. He glanced from the officers to Renee, then back again, his expression hardening. "What's going on here?" he demanded. Trent straightened. "Suspicious vehicle, sir. You were just stopping the new chief of police." Hayes cut in, his voice like steel. The words hit Trent and Miller like a physical blow. They both turned toward Renee, their eyes wide. She gave them a small, polite smile. "Dr. Renee Parker, as of today, your commanding officer." The silence that followed was deafening. For a moment, neither Trent nor Miller spoke. Their faces betrayed a rapid sequence of emotions, disbelief, confusion, and finally, the creeping realization that they had just made a career-defining mistake. Renee didn't rush them. She stood tall, letting the weight of the moment settle. The early morning sun cast a halo of light around her, and in that instant, she looked every inch the leader she was. "Chief Parker?" Miller's voice was barely more than a whisper. "That's correct," Renee replied. "And as your new chief, I find it concerning that my first interaction with my officers involves an unnecessary roadside interrogation." Trent's eyes darted toward Captain Hayes, as if hoping for some form of rescue. But Hayes wasn't offering any lifeline. His folded arms and stony glare made it clear they were on their own. "Ma'am, we didn't," Trent began, but Renee held up a hand. "Stop. Let's not rewrite what just happened. You saw a black woman in a luxury car in a neighborhood you decided she didn't belong in, and you acted accordingly." "Correct." Both men shifted uncomfortably. Miller looked down at the pavement. Trent clenched his jaw, but said nothing. "That silence speaks volumes," Renee continued. "And this is exactly why I took this job. Because if my own officers are making biased stops, what does that mean for the people we've sworn to protect?" Her words landed with the kind of precision that left no room for argument. Hayes finally stepped forward, his tone clipped. "Gentlemen, I suggest you apologize to your new chief before this conversation moves to a more formal setting." "Yes, sir," Miller said quickly. "Chief Parker, I'm sorry. We misjudged the situation." Trent followed, though his pride seemed to resist every syllable. "Apologies, Chief. It won't happen again." Renee's expression softened slightly, but her voice remained firm. I appreciate your words, but I value action more than apologies. If you mean what you say, you'll start by attending the new bias training I'm implementing department-wide. Hayes glanced at her, a faint smile tugging at the corner of his mouth. That's already on the calendar, isn't it? It is now, she said. Without another word, Renee walked back to her car, the click of her heels echoing in the charged silence. She placed her briefcase in the passenger seat, adjusted her blazer, and started the engine. Before pulling away, she rolled down the window and looked directly at Trent and Miller. Gentlemen, the badge you wear is a promise, not a privilege. Keep that in mind next time you decide who belongs where. The two officers stood there, watching as her car disappeared down the street toward the station. Hayes turned to them, his voice low but sharp. If you think this morning was uncomfortable, just wait until the staff meeting. The patrol car felt colder as Trent and Miller got back inside. Neither spoke. The hum of the engine was the only sound. And for the first time in their careers, they both realized just how quickly power could shift. The morning briefing room was buzzing with chatter when Renee Parker walked in. The moment she stepped through the door, conversation died. Every uniformed officer in the room turned to look at her, some with curiosity, others with outright shock. Captain Hayes entered right behind her, his usual gruff expression softening ever so slightly. Listen up, everyone, he announced. We've got some changes coming. Meet your new chief, Renee Parker. A ripple of surprise passed through the room. Some stood straighter. Others exchanged quick, nervous glances. And in the corner, Trent and Miller looked like they wanted to melt into the walls. Renee took her place at the front, her posture confident, her gaze sweeping across the room like a searchlight. Good morning, she began. Her voice was calm, but carried a weight that made everyone listen. I'm not here to be liked. I'm here to make sure this department serves every member of our community, without prejudice, without favoritism, and without abuse of authority. She let the silence stretch for a few seconds before continuing. Some of you might already know me from my years with the FBI. I've worked undercover. I've broken up trafficking rings. I've faced situations where backup wasn't coming. And let me be clear, the one thing that always made the difference was trust. Trust in your partner, trust in your community, and trust from the community in us. Her eyes locked briefly on Trent and Miller. This morning, I experienced firsthand why that trust is broken for some people in this city. It starts with small decisions, who we stop, who we question, and why. If you think bias doesn't exist here, think again. A murmur rippled through the crowd. Renee didn't flinch. From today forward, every officer in this department will undergo mandatory bias and de-escalation training. Every traffic stop will be logged with specific cause, and body cam reviews will be conducted at random by me. And if you think you can get around that, try me. Hayes folded his arms, clearly enjoying the stunned silence. I expect professionalism. I expect fairness. And I expect you to remember that the badge you wear isn't a license to intimidate. It's a responsibility to protect. She paused, letting her gaze move from face to face. If you can't handle that, you might want to hand in your resignation now. No hard feelings. For a long moment, no one moved. Then one officer, a young woman in the back, spoke up. Chief Parker, welcome to the team. A few others nodded in agreement. The tension eased just a little. Renee gave a small smile. Thank you. Now let's get to work. As the meeting wrapped up, officers filed out, some already whispering to each other. Trent and Miller stayed in their seats, avoiding her gaze. Renee knew winning them over, or at least getting them to do their jobs right, would be a longer battle. But she was ready. When the room finally emptied, Hayes smirked. Not bad for your first day. Renee, adjusted her blazer. "Oh, Hayes, this wasn't my first day. This was my warning shot." 2 weeks later, the sun was barely up when Renee got a call on her secure line. A violent robbery suspect had been spotted in an abandoned warehouse on the east side, the kind of call that usually ended in a standoff. She was at the scene in minutes, dressed in tactical gear. Captain Hayes was already there, briefing the team. "Suspects armed, possibly with hostages," he said. "We're setting up perimeter and waiting for SWAT." Renee glanced at the cluster of patrol officers nearby and spotted Trent and Miller among them. She caught Hayes's eye. "We're not waiting," she said flatly. Hayes raised an eyebrow. "Chief, with all due respect." "No," she cut in, "with all due respect. If there's someone in there in danger, we move now." Without another word, she strode toward the building. The officers exchanged uneasy looks, but when your chief is walking into a high-risk situation, you follow. Inside, the air smelled of mildew and dust. Sunlight filtered through broken windows, casting jagged beams across the cracked concrete floor. They moved quietly, checking each corner. A sudden noise, a sharp clatter from upstairs. Renee signaled with 2 fingers, and the team spread out. She took point, her Glock steady in her hands. As they reached the upper floor, a figure burst from behind a door, gun in hand. "Drop it!" Renee's voice was calm, but commanding. The suspect hesitated, eyes darting between her and the other officers. "I said drop it," she repeated, stepping forward. "You don't want this to end badly." For a tense moment, no one moved. Then the suspect's gun clattered to the ground. Renee was on him in seconds, cuffing him with practice speed. From the doorway, Trent and Miller stood frozen. They'd seen her in charge during the meeting, but this was different. This was her in action, in total control, with no hesitation. Once the suspect was secured, Renee turned to them. "You two, clear the rest of the floor." They scrambled to obey. Outside, the media had already gathered. Cameras rolled as Renee escorted the suspect out, flanked by her team. A reporter shouted, "Chief Parker, how did you manage to bring him in so quickly?" Renee stopped, her expression steady. "We train for moments like this. We stay calm, we stay focused, and we treat every life like it matters. That's how we do it." Her words made the evening news, but it was the footage of her decisive action and the sight of Trent and Miller following her lead that went viral. Later that evening, in the locker room, Miller muttered to Trent, "She's legit." Trent didn't respond right away. Finally, he said, "Yeah, guess we judged too fast." In her office, Renee reviewed the day's body cam footage. She wasn't looking for praise. She was making sure every officer saw exactly how things should be done. She smiled to herself. The work was just beginning, but the message was clear. This wasn't just her department now. This was her standard.